Got a nice rainy day out there. It looks like it's supposed to rain all day and all night. We're taking one day off of shipping, and I'm now in the high tunnel in our neighbor's yard for the day, working on doing a really deep soaking of the garden beds in here. And then I'm going to be bringing in a bunch of shredded leaves that we have collected recently to mulch around all of the transplants in this space. So I thought it'd be a nice chance to do an update on what's going on in here, how things are working. Overall, it's looking really nice for being early mid-November. Our neighbors have been doing a whole lot of the watering lately, which is super helpful. The rain tanks up on the hill off the north side of their barn have been doing a nice job of holding enough water, and we've got lots of greens coming into the winter months, so long as we keep it hydrated, nicely mulched, and then button it up once things get cold. We should be in a pretty good way to be able to eat lots of greens from here this winter. I'm gonna go through and cut all these marigolds. I think we're asking for them to really disappear if we don't cut them soon. Sasha will probably dry them, save some seed from those. You can see I've got the water running right now. This is all from the rain tanks that are up hanging off the barn. Looks like it actually is coming from a well, but this is rainwater which was collected upslope. And so I'm going through bed by bed. I'm cutting out old plants, cutting back old plants. So that's Tulsi that I'm watering right now. And then we've got arugula. There's some random mustards, but those are welcome for the winter months. A whole bunch of parsley. And once it's all soaked, one final deep soaking here, we'll go through with shredded leaves and mulch everything super deeply. And that should mean that we don't need to water them again, maybe for the rest of the winter as it cools off and we get more rains and snow that's melting into the groundwater around us. But I'm just going to move this piece by piece to a new spot, let it soak for a bit. With all this rain coming in, I feel like we can use this pretty extensively, and that feels very exciting. It remains to be seen how it'll all work out, but the timing seems like it worked out pretty nicely so far with these lettuces in particular. These mustards, these are volunteers, they're weeds, quote unquote, but we can cook those. So we're gonna let those grow for a little bit longer and then cut them low and release the canopy to the lettuces. But my gosh, it's just the idea of being able to eat salads into December, maybe January, if we get the space buttoned up, feels just so thrilling. I'm seeing the bottoms of some plants that have been getting chewed by probably voles. So we're gonna have to make sure cats are invited in to do some hunting. Let me show you what I mean. This right here happened relatively recently. It looks like vole damage to me, and I see the tunnels down below. Maybe it's chipmunks and voles. So we have to keep an eye on that. I don't want to set traps necessarily. Hopefully our cats will get interested, or other wild creatures, but that could be the only thing that at the moment would hurt the transplants we have in here. But fingers crossed they keep growing and we get to eat quite a bit of the ways into the winter. Look at that, oh my gosh. Some of these volunteer mustards. The beauty of letting seeds drop back into your gardens. You get the transplants you care about, and then you can cultivate out the mustards and the other plants, but we could also just leave them. This right here is entirely seeds that dropped in that we just left, and those are looking the nicest of all. A big sea of purple and green mustards. Probably could have done this earlier because we've definitely experienced a frost in here, but the hot peppers got just enough frost to mainly kill the plants, but the peppers themselves look like they're okay. So I think what I might do is actually cut these plants really low, and then we can bring them into the house and dry them and process them the rest of the way later. There's too much nice looking pepper in there to just let them rot away. I did transplant in a bunch of red Russian kale around them, so having the peppers removed in a careful way with minimal soil disturbance would be a nice release for the kales. The first round of leaf bags that we collected were nice and dry. I talked about this in another video. I used an electric push mower with the bag on the back, chopped up the leaves pretty finely, and I packed them in these bags. We have a number of these bags now. This one's actually the most coarsely chopped, so I'm using it for some bigger areas in here. This got a good soaking. It's weeded somewhat, but I'm not too worried about that. But I'm just gonna mulch the heck of it, mulch it the heck down, so that it holds the water in, it reflects more light back into the plants, it insulates the soil, and it feeds the soil over the winter. And I think it'll look quite nice too as a underpinning to all of these greens that we can harvest from. The first bag's been spread out very loosely, roughly. We'll go in for detail later. But I really like the aesthetic of that. This nice light-colored, insulative, shredded leaf with all sorts of greens around. I know it's going to put the soil into a much better way. It's really affirming of the needs of the worm life in there too. The moisture from the soil underneath will slowly migrate up into the leaves, or we can soak it down really intensely if we want to feed the soil life in a flush way. I wouldn't mind the slow burn and just letting it happen slowly over fall and winter. A little distracted here because I see, ooh, another fig. A little underripe, but I'll take it. Oh, no, that's perfectly ripe. Part of emptying that first leaf bag is to have an empty container to now refill with clean break. I want to break off any leaves that have had damage. It seems like now that things have gotten colder, the newer growth on some of these kales and chard look a lot better. That still has some holes, but it's very serviceable for eating. This is a 6-foot tall towering kale, and I'd like to get these nice and clean going into the winter. These palm tree overstories planted in the spring and is growing ridiculously all summer. Now when we come in here, pretty much all the leaves will be leaves we can be harvesting to cook with, at least to cook for the dogs. Almost certainly most of these leaves, especially the higher up they go, they look very, very nice, and they should be around until it gets very cold. This height of plant, it's really cool looking, but it leaves it way more exposed to extreme cold. So I think it'll be the lower plants that survive deeper into the winter. So we'll prioritize enjoying and eating these first, but I'll go through and tidy up the rest and get those organized so that we can send those to the chickens or for the dogs or for us. Still have a few more kales to clean up here or there, but I almost have an entirely packed full bag, which is going to be so lovely to offer up the chickens on a rainy day like this. We'll put it in a space where they can eat sheltered from the rain. But the areas where I've gone through a little bit more, they look quite a bit nicer. I'm leaving a little bit of hole here or there, no big deal. But that's still certainly serviceable. I don't want to just scrap everything, but so nice to see how good the future greens are looking so long as we don't let it get too cold in here, which is a project for another day. I drove our little car over, even though it's the next door neighbors, because I wanted to bring the 3 bags of leaves, and I'm glad I did because this is what came out of the high tunnel. We had some leftover squash that we're curing. Those will definitely cook up for the dogs. Tons of hot peppers to dry over the wood stove, and marigolds to process, and a whole bag filled with greens for the chickens. Pretty fruitful yield for a wrap-up moment for a high tunnel that's now transitioned fully to winter crops. I noticed I'm looking at the south side here, don't mind my hands, they're leaf covered. When I was working on this side, I was feeling some wind sneaking up under the plastic, which I know is going to be an issue once it gets cold. So put it in the back of my mind, now that we don't need to get good ventilation through here, maybe I'll renovate this overflow trench for the pond at some point and get all that soil packed up against that poly, since that's going to be a really intense entry point for cold. But we got a little ways before we have to worry about that. For now, the fresh air is fine enough. And there's high tunnel a little bit more renovated. The leaves are all down. I'm going to put some more mulch in the central walkway. Everything got a good deep soak, and most of the older leaves on the kales and chards have been cracked off. Feels like a good place to pause here. We'll share some more updates as things evolve and deepen into the winter. Let us know what other specific parts of this high tunnel you'd be interested in seeing more details on, or questions you may have, or suggestions. But for now, we'll let the earthworms exalt in the fresh deposit of rainwater and finely shredded mixed deciduous leaves underneath the canopies of mustards, kales, and parsleys. Thanks for watching.